The air was thick with tension as I entered the dimly lit room, the glow of city lights flickering through the cracked blinds like broken promises. My chest tightened, knowing something was wrong. James said, "You were never meant to find out this way." His words sliced through me sharper than any knife. My best friend, the one I trusted more than anyone, stood before me with eyes that glistened not with guilt, but with grief. I whispered, "After everything, you chose money over me." The betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a complete tearing of the bond we had built. The walls seemed to close in as my mind replayed every laugh, every secret shared, every promise of loyalty. They all felt poisoned now. James smiled faintly, his confidence reeking of arrogance, and said, "Loyalty doesn't pay bills, but money does." My fists trembled, not from fear, but from the rage building inside me. The world I knew shattered in that instant, and in its place burned a single truth. I could never forgive this betrayal. I staggered outside, the cold night air hitting me harder than any punch. My mind raced with disbelief. The streets felt unfamiliar, as if the betrayal had rewritten the world itself. Memories of James laughing beside me stabbed deeper than the winter wind. I thought, how could someone I called brother sell me out so cheaply? The city hummed indifferently, its neon glow mocking my pain. Every sound of passing cars and footsteps reminded me I was utterly alone. Rage coiled inside me, but grief pressed harder on my chest. My trust, my faith, my very sense of belonging was gone in a single moment. That night became the graveyard of everything I thought I knew. Wow. I couldn't stop my mind from clawing back to the beginning. James wasn't always the enemy. We were two kids fighting the world together, sharing bread when we had nothing. I remembered his promise, "No matter what happens, we've got each other." Those words once lit my darkest nights. But now, replaying them felt like salt on a wound. Every image of our childhood bond became a reminder of how cruel betrayal could be. He had been more than a friend. He was my family. And now that family had turned into my executioner. Looking back, the signs were always there, hiding in plain sight. The way James avoided eye contact when money was discussed, the hushed phone calls he thought I never noticed, the sudden expensive watch he claimed was a gift. My gut whispered warnings, but my heart silenced them. I wanted to believe in our bond too much. I ignored the cracks, convinced loyalty could never be broken. But I was wrong. Trust blinded me, and betrayal had been building its nest all along. When I finally confronted him, the silence between us was heavier than words. I stared into his eyes, searching for a trace of the friend I once knew. Instead, I saw only cold ambition staring back. James said, "This is just business." My heart thundered in my chest as I replied, "And this is the end of us." It was not just the end of a friendship. It was the death of trust itself. The bond we had built for years shattered like glass underfoot. That night, revenge carved its first mark into my soul. I sat in the silence of my apartment, rage twisting into a vow I could not undo. The betrayal had lit a fire I could no longer contain. I whispered to myself, if he values money more than loyalty, I'll make him pay with everything he holds dear. The city outside buzzed with empty indifference, but within me, a storm brewed. I replayed every word James spat in arrogance, every smirk that mocked my pain. That memory became my fuel. My hands shook as I scribbled plans on a notebook, each mark an oath. I would not sit idle while my life burned. No, I would rise, not as the Sarah Miller he expected, but as the reckoning he never saw coming. This was no longer about friendship. It was war. When I met Marcus, the Marcus Hale who had lived through betrayal, his eyes carried a weight I recognized. He said, "Revenge consumes faster than fire." I replied, "Then let it burn because I have nothing left." Marcus studied me, his silence louder than his words. His scars were not only on his skin, but carved into his soul. He warned, "The path you seek is not a road back, only a road deeper in." I clenched my jaw, unwilling to turn away. His warnings could not cool the inferno inside me. If anything, they stoked it. I thought, he may guide me, but nothing will stop me. I didn't expect Daniel to get involved, but when he showed up at my door, his concern was obvious. He said, "I know what you're planning, and it'll destroy you." I shook my head, replying, "It's already destroyed me." His hesitation told me he feared what I was becoming. Daniel had always been the cautious one, the anchor in storms. But even he couldn't deny the truth of my pain. I saw the conflict in his eyes, torn between protecting me or stopping me. "If you go through with this," he said, "there's no turning back." I simply answered, "Then I'll keep walking." Planning revenge became my only focus. The map of James' world unfolded before me, and every connection became a target. I whispered, "If he plays with greed, I'll play with his empire." I marked locations, names, weaknesses, each stroke like a blade carving into his false security. Daniel hovered nervously behind me, whispering doubts I refused to hear. Marcus's voice echoed in my head, warning me that vengeance carried no return ticket. Still, I pressed forward. This wasn't just strategy. This was survival. James thought he ended me, but all he did was awaken the part of me he never imagined. James flaunted his new life as if betrayal were a trophy. I watched him from the shadows as he stepped out of a sleek car, designer suit gleaming under streetlights. He laughed with wealthy strangers, his voice dripping arrogance. I whispered to myself, "He thinks he's untouchable." My fists clenched as the rage surged, but I held back. This wasn't the moment. This was the observation, the first step to tearing his world apart piece by piece. He smiled, as if the world belonged to him. Soon he would learn the cost of that smile. The deeper I dug, the more filth I uncovered. James had not only betrayed me, he had built his empire on the ruins of others. Paper trails, stolen contracts, secret deals, all painted him as more corrupt than I ever imagined. My chest tightened with every discovery, fury carving scars across my thoughts. I whispered, "This isn't just personal anymore. He's feeding on the weak." The lies he told me were the same lies he sold to everyone else. My trust was just one of many currencies he traded for power. Rage turned into resolve. This wasn't only about revenge. This was about exposing the truth he thought would never surface. The Sarah Miller's story echoed in my head, reminding me why this fight mattered. She was just another casualty in James' hunger for wealth, her life shattered by his greed. I visited her small home, the silence heavy with loss. Her mother whispered, "He took everything from us." Their eyes reflected the same pain that burned in me. I clenched my fists, vowing silently that no one else would suffer at his hands. It was in that broken space I found my anchor. This wasn't about reclaiming what he stole from me alone. This was about justice for those who never got the chance to fight back. The first real warning came from the Victor Kane, a man who looked like he was built from stone. He cornered me in a dark alley, his voice low and threatening. "Walk away before this gets ugly." His presence was suffocating, but my anger outweighed my fear. I stared him down and replied, "Tell James I'm just getting started." His eyes narrowed, surprise flickering behind his hardened stare. He was used to fear, but I gave him defiance. That night I realized James was preparing for war too, sending his weapon to scare me. Instead, all it did was sharpen my edge. Daniel's voice trembled as he confronted me. "You're losing yourself," he said, his tone pleading. I paced across the room, fury still consuming me. "I can't stop now," I shot back. His eyes reflected fear, not of James but of me. The more I spoke, the more he realized I was stepping into darkness I might never return from. He whispered, "You're not the man I knew." His words pierced deeper than I expected, but I buried the sting. I told him, if standing up to betrayal makes me a different man, then so be it. The silence afterward was heavier than any argument. Marcus broke his silence, sharing a piece of his past I never expected. He once chased revenge too, but it cost him everything. His voice was gravelly as he said, "I buried friends, I lost myself, and in the end I was no closer to peace." I studied his scars, both visible and invisible, and for a moment, doubt seeped into me. He warned, "Revenge is a hunger that never ends." I clenched my jaw, fighting the conflict inside. I told him I can't walk away, not this time. His eyes reflected sadness, not judgment. He knew I was stepping onto the same path he once walked, and he couldn't stop me. James' empire began to show cracks. Whispers circled in the underworld, rumors of his deals unraveling. I watched from the shadows as one of his business partners stormed out of a meeting, face red with fury. I thought, the mask is slipping. James' calm facade hid panic, but I knew him too well. His charm was a shield, and that shield was denting. He underestimated me, believed my silence meant defeat. He didn't see I had already planted seeds that made his kingdom rot from within. The lies he told the world began to weigh on him. Every smile grew tighter, every laugh forced. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. And that gave me strength. Digging deeper, I uncovered a secret James buried for years, a deal with men more dangerous than himself. The revelation hit me like thunder. He wasn't just greedy, he was reckless, playing with forces he couldn't control. I whispered, "Even his allies are waiting to devour him." This knowledge shifted the game. His betrayal of me was personal, but this betrayal of others was lethal. He had made enemies stronger than I could ever be. I didn't need to bring him down alone. I only needed to expose the truth. Watching his empire collapse from within would be the sweetest revenge. The victor Cain appeared again, but this time his voice carried doubt. He leaned closer, whispering, "James isn't who you think he is." His words carried weight, not threat. I stared at him, confused, sensing hesitation in his hardened eyes. He had always been James' sword, but even swords can dull. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. His silence spoke louder than answers. Loyalty built on fear had cracks too. For the first time, I saw a man torn, caught between survival and conscience. James was losing more than his empire. He was losing those bound to him by force. Daniel's voice trembled when he confronted me again. "You're changing, and I don't know if I can follow you anymore." I felt his words like a knife twisting, but I couldn't stop. I told him, if I stop now, everything he did goes unanswered. His eyes filled with pain, torn between friendship and fear. The line between justice and obsession blurred inside me, but I couldn't turn back. Daniel shook his head, whispering, "This isn't you." For a moment, I almost believed him. But then James' smirk returned to my memory, reigniting the fire. I chose vengeance, even if it meant losing Daniel. Marcus finally revealed his deepest wound. Over a quiet drink, he said, "I once stood where you stand. I thought revenge would heal me. Instead, it consumed me until nothing was left." His scarred hands shook slightly as he spoke. I saw the weight of years in his eyes, sorrow carved into every wrinkle. "You can still choose another way," he whispered. But my heart was deaf. I answered, "The choice was stolen from me the moment he betrayed me." Marcus sighed, his silence heavy with regret. He knew my road was set, and like him, I would have to learn my lesson in blood. The time for planning was over. I struck first, small but sharp. I leaked documents exposing James' corruption, sending ripples through his empire. Phones rang, investors panicked, and the once unshakable walls of his fortress began to tremble. I whispered, "The fall begins." For the first time, James was forced into defense, scrambling to hold on. I imagined his face, smugness cracking into fury. Every move I made was precise, meant to bleed him slowly. Revenge wasn't a single strike, it was 1,000 cuts, and I was just getting started. James retaliated swiftly. His anger was volcanic, his moves ruthless. He sent men to intimidate me, shadows lurking outside my door. I stared at them through cracked blinds, my heart steady, not shaken. Fear had no room left in me. He thought threats would make me fold. Instead, They became fuel. Every attack was proof of his desperation. I whispered, "He's losing control." The man who once stood untouchable now flailed like a beast trap, and I intended to tighten the cage until there was no escape. The Victor Kane cornered me again, but his fists never flew. Wah! Instead, his eyes burned with conflict. "He's finished," he muttered, almost to himself. I saw the crack widen. He wasn't my enemy anymore, not fully. He was a man trapped, chained by fear and loyalty. I asked, "How long will you bleed for him?" He turned away, fists trembling, torn between survival and truth. His silence was my answer. Even James' strongest weapon was breaking, proof his empire wasn't invincible. Whenever doubt clawed at me, I returned to the memory of the Sarah Miller. Her broken home, her mother's trembling voice, it all became the fuel I needed. "This isn't just my revenge," I whispered. "This is for all of them." Every step I took became heavier with responsibility, not just rage. James didn't just betray me. He destroyed lives, and those lives deserved justice. My resolve hardened into something stronger than anger, purpose. And purpose gave me strength I didn't know I had. Daniel's decision came like a hammer blow. He stood before me, eyes filled with pain. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. My chest tightened, but I didn't plead. I simply nodded, knowing vengeance had cost me his loyalty. His departure cut deeper than I admitted, but I buried it under steel resolve. If this path meant walking alone, then so be it. James had taken everything, my trust, my peace, now even my friend. But that loss only sharpened the blade of my vengeance. I whispered to myself, he will pay no matter the cost. The night of reckoning had come. I walked into the abandoned factory where James waited, the silence broken only by dripping pipes. His smirk was still there, though thinner now, forced. "You think you've won?" he asked. I stepped closer, every muscle burning with control. "No," I replied, "but you've already lost." His empire was crumbling, his allies gone, his Victor Kane wavering. Yet he clung to arrogance like it could save him. I studied him, searching for the friend I once knew, but there was nothing left but greed and fear. I whispered, "You chose money over everything. Now money won't save you." As tension thickened, James revealed the twist he'd kept hidden. "You weren't the only one betrayed," he said coldly. He confessed to framing me for deals I never touched, turning whispers into weapons. My stomach churned, rage boiling. Every wrong I suffered was not accidental. It was calculated. His betrayal went deeper than greed. It was a game to him, and I had been his pawn. My breath grew heavier as I said, "You destroyed my life for profit." He sneered, and I'd do it again. The last thread of restraint inside me snapped, turning resolve into fury. The lies unraveled as I forced him to face the evidence. Documents I'd uncovered spilled across the table between us, exposing his corruption. His eyes darted, panic flashing for the first time. The arrogant mask slipped, revealing the desperate man beneath. "You can't prove anything," he shouted, though his voice shook. I leaned closer and whispered, "I already did." His breath faltered. The sound of his empire collapsing outside the factory walls seemed to echo around us. He realized he was no longer in control. The betrayal he thought buried was now the noose tightening around his neck. Marcus's voice echoed in my head one last time, his warning carried through memory. "Revenge will take more than it gives." "You'll..." I stood frozen for a breath, staring at James, torn between justice and destruction. Daniel's absence weighed on me, reminding me of the cost already paid. James mocked me, "Do it then. Finish it." His voice dripped with defiance, daring me to cross the line. My fists clenched, my mind fractured between humanity and vengeance. I whispered to myself, "If I don't end this, he'll rise again." The choice burned like fire, and I stepped forward to decide his fate. The climax erupted in raw confrontation. I lunged, years of rage unleashed in every strike, James staggering backward, his arrogance shattered. His cries echoed through the factory, colliding with my fury. Each blow was more than violence. It was the weight of betrayal, loss, and vengeance. Finally, I pinned him down, my breath ragged. His eyes, once smug, now wide with fear. I hovered on the edge of ending him. My heart thundered. Justice demanded one path, vengeance another. I whispered, "This ends tonight." Whether by my hand or by his downfall, Jameson's reign was over. The echoes of violence lingered in the factory long after the fight had ended. I stood over James, my chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm, each breath a reminder that the rage consuming me had nearly claimed my soul. The silence pressed down heavy, only broken by the distant hum of the city outside. James lay sprawled on the ground, his once polished suit torn, his face marked with the evidence of every choice he had made, every betrayal he had embraced. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was hollow. This was the moment I thought would complete me, yet it only deepened the emptiness. My fists trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of what I had become. For a fleeting instant, I saw James not as a monster, but as the friend I once trusted, the boy who once laughed beside me. That image shattered quickly, drowned by the memory of every wound he had inflicted. I whispered, "It's over," but the words echoed like a lie. The war had ended, but peace remained as distant as the stars above. The city didn't wait for grief. It moved on, uncaring of my war. In a diner filled with strangers, I sat hunched over a cup of bitter coffee, my reflection staring back from its dark surface. On the television above the counter, James' empire was dissected piece by piece. Newscasters spoke with cold efficiency, listing scandals, betrayals, and the collapse of everything he had built. Patrons murmured in low voices, their conversations weaving into the hum of clinking silverware. They spoke of him as though he were nothing more than a story, a fallen name stripped of power. None of them knew I was the shadow behind his destruction. I sat silent, letting their words wash over me, feeling both vindicated and utterly alien. To the world, justice had been served. To me, the cost was etched in every scar, every sleepless night, every friend I had lost along the way. I whispered, "You finally wear the mask I always saw," but the satisfaction was fragile, crumbling before it could root itself in my heart. The streets were empty as dawn cracked the horizon. I walked with heavy steps, each footfall echoing against the wet pavement. Neon lights faded under the pale embrace of morning, leaving the city stripped of its illusions. The battle was done, but inside me the war continued. Betrayal had ended James' reign, but its shadow clung to me, altering who I was forever. I whispered, "What pieces of me are left?" My voice was swallowed by the hollow city. Daniel's absence pierced me most, his loyalty lost to my choices. I replayed his final words again and again, each one a wound deeper than James' fists could ever land. Marcus's warnings haunted me too, a grim reminder that revenge reshaped men into something unrecognizable. I stopped at an empty intersection, staring at the silent skyscrapers towering above me. They looked like cold monuments to greed, each one a reflection of James' hunger. I realized then that even in victory, I stood among ruins. The enemy was gone, but the cost was written in everything I had lost. When Marcus met me again, the silence between us carried the weight of everything unsaid. His scars told a story I now understood. He raised his glass, his voice low. "You walk through fire, but don't let it consume the rest of you." His eyes reflected sorrow, but also pride. For the first time, I saw not just a mentor but a man who recognized himself in me. I admitted, "I don't know how to be anything but broken now." He leaned closer, his words heavy. "Broken doesn't mean finished. Sometimes it means rebuilt." His wisdom cut through my defenses, but the ache in my chest lingered. I thought of Daniel, of Sarah, of every soul tangled in James' web. Their absence left a silence I couldn't escape. Marcus placed a hand on mine, steady, grounding me in the moment. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. It was survival. And maybe survival was the only gift betrayal had left me. The rooftop overlooked the city, its vastness stretching endlessly beneath a night sky littered with stars and neon glow. I stood at the edge, wind pulling at my clothes, my heart steady for the first time in years. Below, life moved on, cars, lights, voices blending into a symphony of survival. I whispered, "Trust is dead, but I am still here." My voice vanished into the night, but I felt it anchor within me. Betrayal had taken my innocence, my friendships, my faith, but it had not taken my existence. The scars would remain, carved deeper than skin, yet they no longer defined only pain. They marked resilience, a testament to what endured. I closed my eyes, feeling the wind cool against my bruised skin, the city's pulse beneath my feet. James was gone, his empire nothing but rubble, but the echoes of his betrayal would haunt me always. With one final glance at the skyline, I turned away, stepping into the unknown, not as a man seeking revenge, but as one who had survived it. And survival, in its fragile imperfection, was enough.